Today, I am continuing to attempt to fix the tick that this engine has. If you try and research how to fix these ticks, I know a lot of people on forums and Facebook, wherever, they say if it's not ticking, it's not a 4.0. But for me, I want to try and get that fixed just to extend the life of my engine. So I have already tried a few things. I tried the Marvel's Magic Mystery Oil. That didn't do anything. I tried Seafoam. That didn't do anything. I didn't do the Seafoam top end cleaner, just I added it to the crankcase oil and some to the fuel. Didn't do what I wanted it to. So I'm actually taking a step now to replace the rocker arm. It's a pretty simple procedure. Basically take the cover off, make sure that your cylinders, number one cylinder is in top dead center, and then just take the valves off, take the push rods out, and replace them. And I do have replacement parts for all those. And hopefully that will take care of the tick that this engine has. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm kind of looking to see what's going to be in my way to get this valve cover off. It doesn't look too bad really. I've got this throttle cable, which I can just fold back, as well as the coolant overflow line, same kind of thing. And then I've got the breather tubes for the CCV system, which I can just pop off, pop them back on. Pretty simple. Other than that, it should come out. I found that a 7/16 wrench fits on these. There are 4 where you will either want a deep socket or a wrench, and I'm just going to use a wrench to pop them off. So next thing to do is to get this valve cover off. Alright, the next thing to do is to get the number one piston at top dead center on the combustion stroke. So the way to do that, I've got the socket, I think it's a 3/4 inch down here. 3/4 inch socket, and we just turn the crankshaft on this bolt down here, and we want to make sure this number one, so what we can do, we want to line up the distributor with this number one spark plug right here. So we can take off the distributor cap and just line it up. I think number one is about right there. Alright, so the next thing to do is to pull off each rocker. Kind of inspected them a little bit. They all seem pretty tight in place. I do have piston, that one may be a little loose there. So I do have number one piston in top dead center on the compression stroke. But next thing to do is to pull each one off, keep them organized. I do have replacements for everything, but I want to keep them organized just in case. So let's get all these out of here. Okay, all of the old hardware is removed. Next thing to do is to replace it with the new. And as I do this, all of the mating surfaces on these new rockers and the push rods are going to be, I'm going to add on some Moly based grease. This is just to help kind of lubricate it before the first initial startup, while the oil is trying to work its way up into the system. That grease will be there to help keep it loose and free for its first startup. So let's get on with that. We'll get everything in place here. So Got our grease right here, and we'll just start putting these push rods down in there. Right, get a little bit on here for it to go down on to that lifter down in there, and you can kind of feel when it's in position down there in the lifter, right? So get a little bit of grease on each end, put them in place like so. Those are all in place. Let's get the rocker arms on there. And I may need to reuse the original bolts, but everything else came in this kit. The rocker arms, the little bearing guide piece, I'm not sure what it's called, as well as the bracket that goes across the two for each cylinder. And then you put this bracket with the same bolts. Going to do them finger tight for now, and I'll get my torque wrench out and torque them down to spec. Cover back on, put all our bolts back in, start it up. Okay, so I'm back out here on another day, just wrapping up the lifter job that I did yesterday. And so I've cleaned up the lifters, push rods, and inspected them closely just to see if there's any unusual wear, and it doesn't seem like there is. There may be. Here, I'll give you a closer look. So I actually took the push rods, and you can roll them across. I have some plexiglass here. I rolled them across it, and that would be able to show you if they were bent or not. They don't seem to have any excessive wear on them at all. And looking more closely at the old rocker arms, there is wear inside this bearing section, I guess. I don't know what you call it, but basically these guys sit right in here, and the rocker arm will rock back and forth, and it relies on oil to reduce the friction. They have these little oil channels, right? And so they all have a bit of wear on them, nothing too extreme. One thing I did notice is that some of these channels are more worn than others. For example, cylinder 5 right here, I have these organized. Cylinder 5 right here, those oil channels are nearly gone. There's not much left there on both sides. So maybe that may have contributed to the tick. Cylinder 1 has a bit more wear than the rest of them. But overall, they're not too terrible. And so, as you just saw, I didn't actually fix the tick completely, which really makes me think that I might need to replace the camshaft. Or a lot of people, to kind of deal with this, will, instead of replacing it with stock rockers, they'll put roller rockers in there. They're a bit pricey. I may end up doing that eventually, but for now I may look more seriously at replacing the camshaft. And I would assume after doing that, the tick should be gone if that's the case. I have done a little bit of research, and people say that the injectors will tick. People say that there's also the possibility of exhaust leaking. I don't think it's piston slap or rod bearing ticking, because it's something that basically, from what I read, is that if it was a rod bearing or a piston, it would get worse with higher RPM on the engine, and mine actually goes away. Right as I accelerate, I can't hear it anymore. But for now, I'm hoping it's either the injectors, which is something that I just deal with, I can't really fix that, or something in the valve train. So the next step would be to replace the camshaft and the lifters. So thank you for watching. This is a how-to video on how to replace your rockers. The tick situation is to be determined.